Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. On the surface, investing in infrastructure can sound a bit dry, shall we say. Big assets, relatively safe and predictable, all the reasons why our super funds love them so much. But under the surface, infrastructure investing is all about people investing in the things that society needs and wants. And as demographics change, those opportunities change as well. Remember, this is general information only, and you should seek professional advice before making investment decisions. Sarah Shaw is the Chief Investment Officer and Global Portfolio Manager at 4D Infrastructure, a boutique asset manager investing in listed infrastructure companies right around the world. Sarah, welcome back to Fear and Greed.
Thanks for having me.
Sarah, we've spoken before, but I've got to ask you what it is about infrastructure that you find so appealing.
Well, you've basically highlighted one of the points I love, which is the defensiveness. I like the stable, predictable, visible earning streams that underpin infrastructure assets. And that's the part that's generally well understood about the asset class. But what I find most exciting is the potential growth that's underpinning the asset class. And it comes to the points you raised. There are so many themes supporting society, supporting the energy transition, supporting the evolution of the globe that all require huge amounts of infrastructure investment. And that growth dynamic is incredibly exciting and provides you visibility, provides you really earnings stability, but with huge growth. What's not to love?
What's not to love? I want to get into the great things, but let's just it's not boring at all because infrastructure as an asset class has truly been one of the saviours for many investors over many, many years. When you think about infrastructure, just what are you talking about? It's because it's quite broad, isn't it?
It is. But it is the basic services that are essential for communities to function and for economies to prosper and grow. And we really split that into two buckets. On the one hand, we have what we call regulated utilities or essential services. So these are your gas, your power, your water networks, really supporting basic survival and societies in general. And then on the other hand, we have what we call user pay assets. So these are your toll roads, your airports, your port companies, your rail, which provide transport and efficiency links for everyone around the globe.
Okay, so let's jump into the growth part of it because everything you've described there, I think most of us understand that toll roads, you pay your toll and, and energy, you pay your utility bills and it's kind of relatively stable. Let's talk about growth. I know you see a lot of opportunities, but let's start with New York water pipes.
Yeah, I think it is one of the 5 key growth thematics, and that is developed market replacement spend. We have very old, aging and falling down infrastructure in a lot of parts of the developed world, which if we don't replace it, is going to have social and economic consequences. You mentioned the New York water pipes, and this is across a lot of the US, which is considered a global superpower. They have water pipes that are over 100 years old. In some places, we are still pulling out wooden water pipes from the ground.
Wow.
And this is creating significant issues, both from a health and social aspect, but also from efficiency and an environmental aspect. So the replacement of the US water network alone is a 100-year investment cycle. And they are not alone in that. If you look at London, over 50% of London's water mains are over 100 years old. And this is a developed market dynamic which must be replaced and is going nowhere.
Okay, so replacement of infrastructure in developed economies, you said, is one of 5 themes. What's another one?
Look, there's the 5 key themes are developed market replacement spend, which we just touched on. Second one is quite simply population growth. We have a population of about 7 billion, which is going to about 11 billion, and we need to support that population growth. The third big one, which I'm really excited about, is the emergence of the middle class in developing economies, which require huge amounts of infrastructure to drive that emergence. And if you consider that 85% of the global population lives in the emerging world, you can understand the size of that dynamic. The fourth big thematic, which we hear a lot about and is growing and growing on a daily basis, is the energy transition or a greener future. And then the fifth big theme, which I think is driving a lot of global equity outperformance at the moment, but is the infrastructure element to it is completely understated, and that is the technology thing. Data centers and all artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things and all of those technology advancements that we're investing in require huge investment in communication towers, as well as huge investments in energy. You need security of supply in your electricity and energy networks if technology is going to produce what it's promising.
Stay with me, Sarah. We'll be back in a minute. My guest today is Sarah Shaw from 4D Infrastructure. Okay, so let's go back to the emergence of middle class in the emerging world, and Asia is on our doorstep. Big population growth there. Is that what you mean? How does that evolve over the next 5, 10, 20, 50 years?
Yeah, look, if you think about any emerging world, in particular Asia, as you mentioned, big populations, as your wealth improves, your fundamental spending patterns change. Look, it starts with a desire for 3 meals a day. That's well understood. But then it moves to things like I want indoor plumbing, clean water. I want gas for cooking and heating. That's all infrastructure. Once you have that, then you want a white good, or you want a television, or you want a fridge, or you want a washing machine. That requires increased usage of that infrastructure. It also requires logistics chains like roads and port capacity and rail networks to get those goods around. And then over time, you may get that scooter or that car, or you may move around and see different parts of your country or the world. That all requires infrastructure. So the reality is infrastructure is the driver of the emergence of the middle class, as well as the first beneficiary of the emergence of the middle class. And I think it's a very exciting theme, considering how much of the globe is striving for a better quality of life.
Okay, so you've got that, and we know about technology, data centers, AI, towers, etc. We know about the energy transition, population growth, obviously a big one. How do you know what to invest in those? I mean, there is so much opportunity, and you can hear the excitement in your voice, Sarah, and I kind of get that. But what's the process you go through to work out what to invest in?
Of course. And look, it really is, I'm still wanting those characteristics that infrastructure is supposed to promise. Yeah. And that is long-term, visible and resilient earning streams. So I want to invest and capitalize on these thematics, but with visibility in my earnings and my valuations. And in order to do that, I need assets and have a regulatory model or a contract structure that is going to uphold those returns over a period of time and can capitalize on these themes. So there's one thing to have the regulation and contract in place, but as a long-term investor within these assets, I need to make sure that those contracts or regulations are going to be upheld throughout the life cycle of an asset. Because if you keep in mind that infrastructure is a very high upfront capital cost, but then you have a lot of scale advantages and you have a lot of return as that asset evolves. So for us, one of the key things that we look at before we're assessing these assets is the strength of a judicial system in the country that we're investing in, which will uphold my contract or regulation, which will ultimately underpin the earnings profile that I'm investing to provide.
Yeah, okay. So the legal, I mean, we talk about good government and good governance. I suppose that's what you're talking about. So if you're going to, I won't pick any particular country, but a country in Asia, you're looking at the legal system, presumably. What else are you, I mean, are there any other sovereign risks that you're particularly worried about?
Governments are going to come and go. I think that's one of the big issues here, that, we are looking at 30, 40, 50-year assets. Yeah. Over that period of time, you're going to see governments come and go. So actually what we're really looking for is the independence of a judicial system relative to governments. I don't want a government to come in and try and change my contract or regulation. Yeah. And if they do, I want the court system to be able to uphold it. So clearly that's key, is actually looking at the strength of the judicial system to withstand any disruption to my contracts. The second thing that we know clearly looking at is a government that is supportive of infrastructure investment and the recognition that they need private sector capital to get the infrastructure in play, that they need to support the evolution of their economies. So they're key. The foundation of the contract or regulation itself, and has to be good. Yeah. And that all has to come together to give me comfort that when I put an investment dollar at work, I'm going to get the return I'm promised thereon.
Okay. Of the ones that you've gone through, the replacement in developed technologies, population growth, middle class, energy transition, technology, do you have a favourite? Is there one that you think has greatest potential, or is it very asset specific?
It's asset and country specific. So it's clearly some themes are very correlated to particular countries. Developed market replacement spend, clearly developed markets. Emerging market, or the emergence of the middle class, is clearly in the developing economies. Energy transition is global. That is the one is just snowballing. But interestingly for us, if we take the energy transition as an example, I'm very much more biased towards the grids. So the transmission, the distribution grids, the networks, over the pure play generation side of things, because for every dollar that you spend on a green generation, you need a multiple spent on grid connections. And I get a very stable, regulated return on that. And that's a very strong investment proposition, which is growing rapidly.
Okay, Sarah. So how should people think about investing in these types of assets? Because obviously we are talking about multi-billion dollars, certainly multi-hundreds of millions of dollars of investments here. How do most people invest in it?
Yes, look, I think you mentioned at the very outset that super funds are looking at it going directly, whereas we are actually invested in the listed equity market. So we're investing in the companies that are executing and building and operating these assets, so the industrial operators. And I think that's a great way for people to gain exposure is through the equity markets, because the beauty of infrastructure, which we've discussed today, is those defensive characteristics plus this huge growth potential. But if you're investing within the listed equity markets, you can also position yourself for the short-term cyclical or macro events that could disrupt markets in the interim. And as a dedicated manager, and if investors are looking to get a pool or a group of assets together, then investing as specialized manager is a great way to do that, because they will be actively positioning the portfolio to capitalize on not only the long-term thematics and characteristics, but also the short-term cyclical events.
Sarah, thank you for talking to Fear and Greed.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That was Sarah Shaw, Chief Investment Officer and Global Portfolio Manager at 4D Infrastructure. This is the Fear and Greed Business Interview. Remember, this is general information only, and you should always seek professional advice before making investment decisions. Join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.